Hi, my name is Michael Bean. I'm a professional film and TV acting teacher. I've been teaching for almost 20 years, and this is your free lesson for myfreeactingclass.com. We're here every Monday from 5 to 6 p.m. Pacific time, UTC -7 for my folks in other time zones, and then it all gets posted to YouTube. So if you are looking for us, this is where you find us. You go to myfreeactingclass.com. Ta-da! And if you want to watch a video from last session, you click here on the video archive. You can download the handbook with story questions PDF. You can also see video from previous lessons, not just here in the video archive, but if you click here on this link at the top, youtube.com, see Michael Bean, will take you to the YouTube channel where all of the recent lessons are posted. So today is an Ask Me Anything session with Michael Bean. So I have no idea where it's going to go. We're just going to let things be guided by your questions today. I don't have any pressing questions that folks have emailed. And so please, I don't know, behave yourselves and don't jump all in at the same time. But jump in when you're ready. Oh, I do actually have an emailed question. So maybe I'll lead with one from the email archive, which is that I got a question about breathing. And a week or two ago that I didn't get a chance to answer because just sort of it's a very specific thing that didn't fit in sessions. It's sort of like, well, how do I notice that I'm not breathing in my acting? And I was actually talking with somebody about this just yesterday. One of my acting teachers, a guy named Larry Moss, whose book, The Intent to Live, very dense, but really valuable. And if you ever get the chance to audit one of his workshops, I believe or take one of his workshops, I believe he only teaches in Los Angeles now. He's getting quite old, but man, he's been around long enough that he can be extraordinarily selective about who he takes in his workshops. So just going and watching is pretty amazing. But his go-to any of the times that I've seen him teach when he's talking to actors is like, are you in voice class? Are you in therapy? And people are like, yeah, Larry, I'm in there. And he's like, not enough. Well, go twice a week. And so just recently I had somebody say like, well, voice class, like what does that have to do with feelings? I don't understand. And the kind of basic idea with voice work, so not singing work or elocution work, which is about making the appropriate sounds and making it sound right. The voice work is about finding where there is tension in your body around the system of vocal production and moving through it. So it's about the release of tension. And my understanding is that so I know as an actor and as a teacher that when people start just making sound, they start feeling stuff. And I know that for myself, when I start doing voice work and like moving through and like unpacking some of that tension and like shaking out some of the like tight bits in my rib cage, my lungs, and my throat, and my face, sometimes big feelings come up like this. So so I know that it works. My story about why is supported by some things that I've heard from massage therapists, from counselor friends of mine. I think it is fairly consistently accurate that the way that we suppress feeling in our day-to-day lives is by tensing muscles. And because there are a lot of places in our life where it is not socially appropriate to express everything that we're thinking and feeling moment to moment, that means that there's a lot of that tension that kind of builds up over time. And so this is a very long answer to your very simple question about breathing, of course, because you asked me, and that's what you get. And so if you are noticing that you are not breathing when you are acting, the win there is that you're noticing it. I think a lot of people have that tension in their bodies, and it's so habitual that they're like, "What? I don't know. I just don't feel things. It's fine." And they're so locked down that they don't notice, right? So that's really more of an issue, right? Like if you're noticing that you're not breathing, that's a great first step. And while yes, it is possible to address that mechanically, by say like writing breath marks into your script, you like put a little slash every time you want to take a breath, make sure that you rehearse that in. So you're like, okay, well, at least I know I'm going to breathe in this box. And that does work for some people. It may point you at a kind of work that might be useful for you, which is voice work. And voice work is about like being more in touch with your breath, noticing that tension and releasing it. And what you'll find is when you address the tension, then you breathe, deeply and openly. Right. So it's so there's the like, here's the technical fix, like you can breath mark. There's also an exercise that was taught to me by a Vancouver, BC, local, very successful actor and coach teacher, who I like, which is to start like, so before going into an acting scene, you start by like taking a breath and then just like, and then breathing it all out. Right, because that then you're gonna get that like big like lung opening breath, and then and you do that a couple of times, and the second time you make sound. Do that a couple of times, and it's like it's super weird, but honestly, it opens you up. It brings up so much feeling. It gets so much breath in your body. Like if you do that and then roll camera and go into your scenes, you'll find that it's so much more alive. Now you better like really know your lines and have your technical stuff down, because of course you'll be feeling more and more in your body. So some of the pre-prepared stuff will go poof. But that extra aliveness, that comes with breath and feeling can be really useful. All right, so there's question number one. Duke, you had a question.
I was hoping you could put or explain more into detail, if you had plenty of time with a breakdown and so forth, what you would do in your research about the director and casting director for an audition that you might see. That would,
Yeah, absolutely. So if I had plenty of time, okay, so if I had plenty of time, like me personally, I don't bother rehearsing or researching the casting director. Right, like it can be useful to know kind of in broad strokes what a specific casting director's preferences are, but it's just not something that's going to be like super relevant to preparing an audition. I think it is very important to understand the style of a show, and so let's say that it's a brand new show, and I can't just like go watch a trailer, or some like clips of that show on YouTube, which I think is sort of what you're talking about, right? Like what would I do to research the director? Am I understanding your question correctly, Duke?
Yeah, whether it's for the current project they're on or past projects they've done, or just what.
Totally. So here, what's a TV show that you watch regularly, Duke? Let's just walk through it in real time. Duke.
Hi. Regularly, let's say Schitt's Creek.
Okay, great. All right, so I go to here's Schitt's Creek. We go to the most recent season. They keep changing the way this works. Okay, looks like I'm not logged into my pro account. I really should have done this before getting all of you looking at me. I think we can probably do this. Okay, this is ridiculous. Hang on a second. I'm going to make you look at my face instead of look at IMDb while I try and figure this out. And so I thought that we could sort of use this as a concrete way to look at it, here it is. Okay, good. So let's say that you're auditioning for Schitt's Creek, and you've got and Paul Fox, who's just the first director on here. Looks like he directed a whole bunch of episodes between 2015 and 2017. Not the most recent episodes, but some of those, a whole bunch of those episodes back in 2015 and 2017. You're like, okay, great. Paul Fox is directing this one. So I look up Paul Fox on IMDb, and if I'm auditioning for Schitt's Creek, obviously the first thing I'm going to do, and I don't watch this show, so I'm not super familiar with the style, is go Schitt's Creek trailer. This will probably pop up some of the most recent trailers. Also probably pop up a bunch of random Marvel movie trailers because I have a 13-year-old, and so that's who's been browsing on my computer. Season 5 official trailer. Here we go. Okay, so we watched a little bit of the trailer, we get a sense of it. Now probably that's enough. Like even though even though Paul Fox hasn't directed any episodes for the last couple of years, still it's like, oh, okay, so humor, it's still fairly realistic. We can sort of wrap words around it, but watching a trailer, can be so effective. Now, let's say that is a totally different show that you're auditioning for, and you find out that the director, it says on the breakdown, is Paul Fox. You're like, okay, who's this Paul Fox guy? And you look him up and you say, okay, he directed some episodes of Schitt's Creek back in 2015 to 2017. And then let's see what he's directed most recently. And so that's where, I think we get into answering Duke's question. It was like, okay, so we go to the Paul Fox, and the Schitt's Creek stuff's not as relevant because that was 5 years ago. What we've got here now is The Lake TV series, 4 episodes, Fraggle Rock, SurrealEstate, The Barbarian and the Troll, Anne with an E, 2019. So these 4 projects in the last few years are probably the most relevant. Right, we've got Mary Kills People, Ransom, Coroner, Working Moms. Right, so we've got some 2019 credits, and then we've got these credits in the last couple of years. So if let's say the project you're auditioning for is a drama, and you can see that clearly because because the script has dramatic things happening. It doesn't have any like tongue-in-cheek the comedy to it. So so it's like, okay, we probably don't need to look at Fraggle Rock then. That's great. Like the directors can direct a lot of different stuff. Maybe what's most relevant is, and SurrealEstate. I'm not. My sense is that that's probably like a reality TV like show. Realtor Nick Roman and elite team of specialists handled the cases no one else can. Haunted and possessed houses that literally scare would-be buyers away. Okay, so again, probably not the most relevant. Barbarian and the Troll follows Evan, a bridge troll in search of adventure. Okay, and it looks kind of Muppety. Okay, so this is in the Fraggle Rock category. The next thing is from years before, N with an E, although there were years here, or young orphan girl living in the 19th century. So it looks like an Anne of Green Gables reboot. If the show that you're auditioning for is kind of more heartfelt, then we might go back and watch some of that. If you're like, oh, it's like kind of heartfelt kids show, maybe that's why they hired him as that. And we're just guessing right now, right? We also don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this because the whole idea is just to try and get some sense of what is the style. So we go to The Lake, and click on the trailer here on IMDb and just see what we get. Okay, so now we've got a sense of it. And honestly, Duke, that's as far as I would go. Is I would watch 1 or 2 representative projects. I would watch like 1 or 2 minutes of each one. I'd be like, okay, that's enough for me to get a guess of this director's preferences and style. And if the producers, the decision makers, have hired the director, to hold together the style for this particular show, then that gives me some clues about the style. So between the script, like the paper in front of me, and a couple of minutes of watching video, that gives me enough information to make a decent guess. And the truth is that like we can't ever know, and directors do truly end up directing things that are wildly different, which you saw just from that one guy who we randomly chose and looked at, where he directed Fraggle Rock, and then like a sort of a more realistic comedy, but before that he was directing a show about people like remodeling and selling haunted houses. Right. So even that one guy's career is clearly all over the place. Some directors have an even more diverse background than that. So it's not like you can game the system and definitely figure out how they're going to cast people. It's just all best guess stuff. Does that answer your question? Yeah, and it's not truly like a difficult thing, and it's not something that I would advise like devoting tons and tons of time to. It's just if you've got the time and the energy, and you can't find a trailer for the show online, then you can go do that. Now, the other thing that you can do, and I did this recently, I was asked to audition for a project that was brand new, and I just looked it up, like the name of the project. It even had like a code name. I was like, this sounds like a code name, right? Where it's like it's if basically if there's like a very big network TV show, sometimes when they're casting, they'll use a code name so that people don't be like, oh my God, it's the Twilight Zone, nah! Or Star Trek, when it was casting and shooting in Vancouver, all of the breakdowns said Tennessee Honey. And when they like posted, right, I have no idea why they picked that, but because people are just like rabidly obsessed with Star Trek, they weren't going to put pictures, and like signs on telephone poles saying Star Trek set this way. And so instead there was, it was just like Tennessee Honey. Probably the signs, for the shooting just said TH. As some people like TH, well, just some other movie shooting, no big deal. Right. So I recently auditioned for a project that had a code name, and so I just looked it up. It was like I entered whatever information I had from the breakdown, and sure enough, I found a Variety.com article, that was like, major network, producing something based on this set of feature films, but in the world, and like it gave me a whole bunch more information than was in the storyline, because that's what they do. Like Variety is a Hollywood-based, acting-related news source. And so sometimes that I'll spend that extra couple of minutes of research doing that instead of watching video. Like in that case, I did that instead of looking up the last couple of things the director had produced. Okay, hit me. Like we talk breathing, we talk research. What questions you got today? Alex, you got something for me? Christina, you got something for me?
Hi, Marco. Yeah. So in the last lesson, I realized something. You told me that I usually see myself in third person. That means I'm judging myself while I'm acting.
Yes.
And something stuck in my mind, and I was like, how can you truly live in the moment and forget about everything else, forget about any type of technical stuff, and just live um, the words that you're supposed to say?
That is a great question that I wish had a very simple answer. And I think the best that I can do, or my best guess at this point, is you probably already, like, viscerally in your body have an answer to this. What's a better analogy for you, sports or music? Which one of those have you engaged with before?
Sports.
Sports. Okay, so what sport would you say you are? Is there a sport that you're highly skilled at, or even if it's just at like a like fun level, not at a like high level competitive, but you're like, yeah, I'm very skilled at soccer or frisbee golf or whatever.
Can I say boxing? Is that
Of
okay?
course, of course you
Okay.
can. Yeah. I don't know what sports you're into. You're like,
Oh yeah.
right. Okay, so boxing is something that like you enjoy and that you're very skilled at. When you are boxing, are you thinking about where to place your hands?
Not really, no.
No. So would you say that you are like totally engaged in that?
Yeah.
Right? But there still is a very specific technical aspect of it, because if not, you would like damage your wrists. Is that accurate?
Yeah, of course.
So how did you get to the point where you could have total engagement in your boxing, without thinking about the technical things?
I would say practicing enough that I don't have to think about where should I, like, how should I throw a punch, because I know how to throw it, but
Mhm.
yeah. So I guess practicing enough so I don't have to think about all the technical stuff.
Exactly.
And
Now, would you say that the technical stuff is totally absent when you're boxing?
no, of course not.
No, right? It's there, but you're not thinking about it, right?
Yeah.
And so I think there's your answer,
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
right? That there's this illusion or this imaginary thing that like, oh, maybe there's just a trick, and then I'll be able to be totally lost in it. And I've said this before, and it's my joke, not joke about this, that's called a psychotic break. When you lose touch with reality and think you're somebody else, and you're very unlikely to do the technical things necessary while also being totally engaged, in like, oh, I'm in another world, I'm another person, like much more likely to just do whatever the heck you feel like. And so just that reminder that it's not magic, it's just unfamiliar, but you probably have experience of like getting lost in something just from something else in your life, right? So I think anybody watching this lesson, you just ask yourself the same question that I asked Alex, right? You don't need to hear it from me. You just need to check in with your body and go, oh, what, right? Actually, I know some things about what does this for me and what it feels like to be totally engaged in something that still has a technical aspect to it, but not be thinking about the technical aspect.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, good. And I'm seeing a question from Christina in the chat window. Do you have any tips for how to improve memorization in cold reading? And so I don't know what you mean by cold reading, Christina, because the way that I use the term cold reading is to do a script that is not memorized. Right. And so your question, can you clarify your question for me? Because do you mean how do I improve memorization? Or how do I improve my cold reading? Or do you just want to know about both? Because by combining the two, I'm confused about what your question is or what you want. And that's just because of the way that I understand the term cold reading. Right? Cold reading means literally cold reading, like not reading something without preparation. How to improve cold reading? Okay, this is something that is very relevant and very much on my mind. I've talked about it in lessons before, and I think it's always useful to review and revisit. A cold reading is the ability to read a script as though you have it memorized, and give the audience that illusion that you have it memorized, even if you don't. And so the way that you do that is you make sure, so if I'm doing the scene with Duke, right, and which is good because Duke's right now just slightly off the center line, so I don't want to be looking right at the camera. Obviously, I want to be looking at Duke. I'm doing the scene with Duke. If I've got my script, right, so I don't have a piece of paper around here, but here, I'll grab a book. So I've got my script here, and I've got it open in front of me, and if I put it even slightly off to one side, right? So even if I put it that far off from Duke, then what happens is, because you really see my eyeballs, like really, our eyeballs are the shiny thing. I think that we are. There's a certain amount of cultural conditioning, at least for anybody who's grown up in a Western culture, to just look at people's eyes and to try and tell how they feel. Right, certainly there are cultures where that's not as big a deal, but most of the ones that are associated with film and TV cultures that I know of, fall into the look at people's eyeballs. Plus, they're the shiny thing, so that's where our eyeballs go. So whether you are paying attention to it or not, you're watching somebody's eyes pretty much all the time. And so that means even slight movements of the eye register. So if my script is here, which is truly just that far over from Duke, then it's noticeable that I'm not looking at Duke, because I'm talking to Duke, and then there's my next line. And because my eyes go angle and then back to Duke, it's really obvious that I'm an actor looking at a script. Because there's no way I would be looking at Duke, talking to Duke, and just randomly look at the floor next to Duke for no reason. They're like, oh, Duke, I'm talking to you, but for some reason I'm just looking at the floor beside you. No reason, just the floor is really interesting to me right now. So first thing is, and it is the most simple technical thing, is put the script directly straight down from Duke. So and position it so that the camera cannot see it. Oop, okay, there's the edge of my frame. And so that I do not have to drop my chin, because again, if I'm talking to Duke, it's very unusual if I'm like, yeah, Duke, I've got something really important to tell you. Weird, it's weird behavior, right? But if I'm just I'm relaxed, I'm moving my body in the way my body needs to move, I'm not utterly rigid and still, and when I have something important to say, I'm like, Duke, I'm still looking at you, but I'm thinking about what to say. And I'm thinking about what to say by reading the lines in my script so I can get them in my brain before saying them out loud. So if you have, especially if you just read through it even a couple of times, but even truly, once you've got some practice, even truly if they hand it to you and you're looking at it absolutely for the first time, which is never going to happen in an audition these days, you have time to get familiar with it at least. As long as it's in a straight line from Duke's eyeballs, then it's like, okay, Duke, I looked at my script and I got my line. I'm going to look back up to you and talk. And so that's the first thing. Keep it straight in line with the other person's eyeballs. Do not talk while looking down, even if that means that the pacing is slower than you want it to be. Because if you've got a trade-off between well, it's this really fast-paced thing and I've got this whole monologue and I really think I should deliver it. But if it's a choice between going fast-paced and delivering the whole thing to Duke's knees, which is, again, going to be super obvious that I'm rereading a script because I'm not looking at Duke, I'm mostly just looking at his knees, way better to be okay, I'd love this to be fast-paced, but instead what's going to happen is I'm going to look down at it and pick it up when I need to, and then I'm going to look up to you and say the next piece. And I'm going to really use that time looking at the script, not to be oh shit, I'm an actor and I'm messing this up. Instead, I'm just going to be I'm really thinking about what to say. Because in some ways that is really accurate. I am thinking about what to say. I'm thinking with my script. And so that's the technical piece of cold reading. So keep it right there. And and it's the kind of thing that if you are willing to put into practice, you can get good at pretty fast. Is glancing down, picking up lines of dialogue, looking up and saying them. And especially with a little bit of practice, you will like fairly quickly, if you're sort of really doing the practice, like picking a spot or a person looking down for the lines, looking up and saying it, you pretty quickly get to the point where you're like, I mostly got it. You're like, yeah, I mostly got those couple of lines. Like, yeah, I got a couple of words wrong, no big deal. Something I've said in these lessons before that I think is really interesting is I don't know what it is like in Los Angeles right now, but for a while, for quite a long while even, Vancouver, BC, the convention is for all actors who utterly memorize their lines completely, right? Like to have their hands free, to believe the script. Like, you can always when you were doing in-person auditions, you could always have the script in your hand. But past a certain point of experience, it was sort of a point of pride for professional actors to be like, no, I'm not even bringing the script in Vancouver. But in LA, not only would they not memorize, I had actor friends who were like, oh yeah, I always make sure to flag my script into the shot because I wanted to advertise to producers, this is just an audition and it's going to get better if you pay me money. What I had explained to me is the reason for that convention is that in LA, some actors, like a tiny, tiny fraction of a percentage of actors, were auditioning so many times a day, they had no time to memorize. And so what happened was every actor wanted to convey to producers that they were probably one of those actors who was so busy that they didn't have time to memorize. And so it got to the point where nobody would memorize because you wanted to start to convey like, yeah, I'm awesome. And you should like pay me so that I can learn these lines. But right now, I'm just too awesome to have the time for that. So, you get what you get. I'm amazing. Which I just think is interesting that like different markets have different conventions. But as a result, for a long time, actors in LA tended to be excellent sight readers and terrible memorizers. Because that's what they were practicing the most. And the actors from Vancouver tended to be highly skilled memorizers because that's what they had to practice all the time. And like, some of them were great sight readers, but not all. So hopefully that answers your question, Christina. I think cold reading is a really useful skill. And even now, like in film and TV auditions, when I'm taping an audition, sometimes, I've got the time with the rest of my life to utterly memorize everything in a script. And if I can, I know I do better acting in those situations because then, like I was saying to Alex, right? Alex's question was basically like, how do you get to the point where you can be totally in it and not be thinking about technical things? Well, for me personally, Michael Bean, the way that I know to do that is I record my lines, at least the day before. I run them while doing something physical, whether that's going for a walk or doing yoga, and then I run them before bed because I know that things like gel in memory while you sleep. And the next day I run them again, usually while like puttering around my house and like doing the things I have to do in the morning anyway. So I'm like needing to like do a practical thing, but also run my lines. Right, I'm running them audio as much as possible so that I'm really listening for what the other person is saying. And then if I do that, I get to the point where I'm not thinking about the lines I need to say. And so then, of course, my attention is available for, I'm going to look at Alex's face while I'm reading with him. I'm going to like really just focus on the circumstances and the relationship and telling the story because I'm not focused on the technical things of like, where should I look? Where should I stand? What should I say? So I know that for myself. That's where I get my best work. Now, I don't always have to have the time or want to prioritize the time to do that with my auditions. Sometimes I'm like, this is 3 lines. I'm sorry, I've already got plans tonight. I'm going to record this in the morning. And for those 3 lines, I'm like, you know what? 2 of them stuck in my head. And this 3rd one, I'm going to put because I usually have my reader on my laptop and then I'm recording with my phone. So I'm going to make the Zoom window with my reader a little bit smaller, like up towards the top of the screen, and then down directly below the eyeballs of my reader, I'm going to make sure that I can see that line in my script, in my PDF. And then I'm going to be like, yeah, this is my first line, Alex, that I just remember because it's stuck in my head. And when we get to the 2nd line, you're going to say something, something, something. I'm going to go, huh. Yeah. well, here's my line and I'm not worried about it and I'm not thinking about technical things because I planned in advance to read it and I'm not beating myself up about that. And I know that I can do good work under those circumstances as well. Right. So I actively use this skill of cold reading when I am taping auditions on my computer. Right. Like, and the whole point is that if you can do it so that nobody knows, then nobody knows. It's really just about what gives you your best work. Right? You don't have to advertise whether you memorized or not, and you also don't get any points for whether you memorized or not. You just get points for, like, do they like your face and voice, and does your work come across easy and natural? So it's a great question. Thank you. Okay, we're coming up on when my intention was to wrap a little bit early today. Any final questions before I wrap today's lesson?
I have a question, but you can say no if you don't want to.
Bring it.
Do you think it's possible that we can see a self-tape from you?
Oh yeah, of course, of course. That's something that I had intended to do ages ago. Yeah, and then it just didn't come up. So let me pull up one right now. And what is it that you're hoping to see with that self-tape?
Basically, how you embodied the character and how um, you choose the strong feeling or emotion or opinion, sorry, about
Of course.
the other, and that you're like the other
Yeah.
character.
Something that I will say is that these days I get coaching on every single audition that I do. Right, like I always get somebody to read with who also has some experience coaching, or at least is a professional actor who's willing to give notes, because then I don't have to do that, like, watching myself third person job at the same time I'm doing the acting job. Right, and so right, and truly, they don't pay me any money for this. I use the website that I keep talking about, weaudition.com, and I'm just like, I look through people's bios and I'm like, great, that person is an experienced actor and their rate is really reasonable, and I book them for 15 minutes, and then I'm like, great, I'm gonna do a couple of takes, then just give me any kind of notes. And I find that those notes often improve my performance. Right, so it is it's not like I think so. What might be really interesting, Alex, is the next time I do one, I'll make sure that I save copies of my first take and my last take, so I can show you, here's the piece of crap that I started with, and then here's what happened after somebody gave me feedback from the outside and I got really specific, and all of that was in the space of 15 or 20 minutes. Right, so I think that might be useful for you as well. But okay, here we go. But this, for instance, this is something from just the other day. Now, I broke my own rule there. Just back up a little bit, because I needed the eye line for the kid, the eye line for my wife, I'm going to glance at in a second, and then the eye line for the person who pounds on the door in a moment. And I ended up putting the scripts just down below the lady pounding on the door. So there's a little glance here. Right. There it is, right there. There, haha, see, caught. There's a little glance over at my script, because that was the line that wasn't sticking in my head before, just so that I was ready for this guy. So not doing it perfectly over here either. right? So one feeling or opinion about the kid, one feeling or opinion about the mom. I'm getting some glare on the glasses, but because of when it was set, I was like, I'm going to use these glasses because they seem more 1997 to me. Etc. So there's a little clip of that. Yeah, and I'm happy to come back to it and show. Like I said, I'll make sure that the next time I do a tape, I don't delete the like first take versus the last take, because if you'd seen the first take of that one, it was pretty boring. Like I had the eye lines, I had maybe like the relationship with the kid, but everything else, we layered in after that. And it was very helpful for me to get an outside eye on it. And I think it might be fun, to show you some of my tapes from, let's say like 4 or 5 years ago, where artistically, creatively, what I was focused on was like powerful, like normatively masculine characters. And so those tapes look a lot like me trying way too hard. And so that also might be useful, like given that that's the note that I give most often to people when I'm reviewing their self tapes, to go like, yeah, look, here's me doing that thing. Because this is me like stretching myself artistically, but I'm not going to get hired to do that, or at least I certainly wasn't at that point, because that was me going like, I'm going to try this thing on that's unfamiliar to me. And watching them back now, I'm like, okay, I can see what you're going for, but I don't believe that you are that guy. So thanks for asking. Okay, thank you for your questions today. That was exactly what I wanted. I will actually have time, to like plan and prep an exciting lesson for next week. I've got a couple of self tapes, including a fantastic one of Alice's that I have not yet reviewed, so that's still in the docket between now and the end of June. And if you have ideas for the next lesson, or if anybody watching this, you've got a good question that you didn't get a chance to ask today, send it to me, because that helps me plan the lessons. It's very helpful for me. So thank you. I'm Michael Bean. This was your free class from myfreeactingclass.com. If you want more of us, all you've got to do is go to myfreeactingclass.com. And hey, if you scroll down far enough, there's a little link to michaelbean.ca. You can find out more about me and working with me, should you want to do so. Thanks for joining today, and I'll see you next Monday, 5 to 6 p.m. Pacific time. Ciao.